Welcome to Slow Down and Speed Up, where we have real one-time coaching sessions with startup founders who are working through the challenges of leadership. I'm your host and executive coach, Brian Wang. Today in the show, we have Cristina Poindexter, who has a career spanning across marketing at Google and Headspace, as well as founding two wellness technology companies. Cristina is at a crossroads. When I first spoke to her about coming on the show, she said she wanted to get into the questions of what's next for me and who do I want to be in this next chapter. As we explore, we touch on the fears of what it means to be truly authentically ourselves in a world that wants us to be different. Midway through the session, Cristina actually goes right to her edge and allows her honest, visceral fear to show up right in the room, real time. It's a glimpse of the tension that we all face in life, the need to put on a mask to maintain our own safety versus being true to ourselves. If you're a founder listening in, this one may hit you more than most. The tension that we're talking about is one of the biggest stressors that entrepreneurs face, but you may find some relief in witnessing Cristina work through it. Hope you enjoy. Hey, Cristina, great to see you.
Good to see you, Brian.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get on this session with you. And just to speak to the audience real quick, just as a quick intro, I'm with Cristina Poindexter today, and she is an experienced tech wellness entrepreneur. Before this session started, she said, don't spend too much time introing me. We'll just jump right into it. So I'm going to honor that and Cristina, hand it over to you and just give you a chance to spend a moment to introduce yourself if you like. And then otherwise, we'll just jump right into what we're here for today.
Sounds good, Brian. Yeah, hello to all of the listeners. Thank you guys for being here. I am a wellness entrepreneur. I have founded two venture-backed businesses, both in the mental health space. The first one was in the AI space, and the second one was a brain health nutrition company. So that one was a little bit more in the CPG space. I've also spent a lot of time at Google and Headspace. So that's where kind of you get the tech and the marketing backgrounds as well. Overall, you meet me at a juncture where I am very much figuring out what to do next. Have been helping various folks in the consulting and advising space for the past year. But that is sort of what Brian and I are probably going to get into today.
Yeah. So this reminds me a little bit about our call from earlier, but there was that question of like, what's next, right? What do
Right.
I want to do next? Yeah.
Yeah.
So just maybe I'll invite you to expand on that question. It's kind of a big one,
Yeah.
right? And so just like in the context of our time here, maybe just frame it up a little bit, and we'll see where we go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I made the decision to leave the last company that I co-founded in May of last year. So almost exactly a year ago. And very much needed a break, right? After you're in the startup trenches for a while, you certainly need a pause, both to recoup energy, but also to kind of reorient, like, okay, where am I going here? What's important in life? What's the point? And just recalibrate. And I thought that process would take me maybe a quarter. 1 year later, I feel like I am still in the thick of it. And not at all necessarily in a bad way, but just in a very reflective place of wanting to protect my time and energy and very much like form this next chapter of my life and work
Mm.
in ways that are healthy for myself and meaningful. And I do think that investigation has led me to go a little bit slower than I ever have in my life or in my career, because I've done a lot of things. I've worked the corporate world. I've worked late stage startup. I've founded two early stage startups. And in the past year, experimented as well with consulting and advising, which is a whole new model. And am now at this juncture where I want to, kind of commit to something again in a bigger way. And that feels heavy. It feels like it comes with a lot of gravitas,
Mm.
and there's probably a good amount of fear of making the wrong decision that's going to end up, I have kind of an engine inside me that I can overdo it, and it has allowed me to build some big things and run teams and do kind of big shiny stuff, but it's come every time at a personal cost. And so I'm really trying to figure out, how do I not keep doing that? Because this is not the first time I got burned out. It's not the second time, it's probably in the third or the fourth time.
Yeah.
And, when you're in that orientation, it's kind of like nothing is worth your own happiness at the end of the day. And yet, you know, I still want to contribute to the world. I still want to bring in income. I still, have these, needs to engage. And so like, what do I engage with and how do I engage with the working world. So
Yeah.
that's the inquiry that I'm in.
Great. Yeah. So just right off the bat, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience in going at a certain speed and being on, I'll check with you and see if this feels right, like the achievement treadmill,
Yeah.
and at great cost. Like end up with burnout and um, it has a certain impacts on you. And now at this juncture, it sounds like simultaneously you're looking to re-enter the space with a sense of purpose, of something that feels really aligned with you, um, and that you really want to meet the condition of this is going to be energizing, sustainable, is actually in service of my own health and wellness. Do those things fit as I say that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say one additional thing. It's like in being someone who has shifted herself more towards like mission oriented work, in the
Yeah.
sense of I really do care about how people are, right? Like there have been too many times where I get kind of lost in the headiness of that,
Mm.
of talking about scale and talking about impact and talking about numbers, and it comes down to like, am I actually taking care of myself? Like, how am I? It's like that, like oxygen mask on first analogy, right? And I think wellness entrepreneurs themselves are kind of on the front lines figuring out how do we shift the culture around work and wellness? Because what's the whole point if I'm out here trying to better other people's mental health and yet
Yeah.
mine is suffering? Like, I have to reorient all of that. And so I'm in the investigation of like, how do I actually orient towards like the models I could choose of how
Mhm.
I provide services in the world,
Right.
right? And like then the next step is, okay, how do I actually do work that helps other people's wellness, right?
Right.
That's kind of a dual task to figure out.
You said you've been in the inquiry for some time. What has it uncovered so far?
Well, it has uncovered that uh, flexibility of scheduling is incredibly important. And there's some things that like uh, other people just assume is like normal now that should be fine. Like, oh, can you just send me your Calendly link? And it's like, I can't do Calendly. Like, I actually cannot decide one schedule of time that I'm going to be free for the foreseeable future and like provide that out into the world
Mm.
and guarantee that my energy is going to be like as people expect it all of the time. Right. And so that's an example of something that I've learned over the years, which is like actually better for me to maintain control over so that I can be perceptive in a much more kind of live way
Mhm.
of, do I have energy for this type of a thing at this point in my journey? Because everything is always unfolding. It's not the strategic, heady, oh, there's this like linear goal that I'm going towards. And like I can see that this thing is going to be in the direction of that linear goal. It's like a very different way of orienting.
Yeah.
And I think that time and scheduling is actually like the front lines of that. And
Mhm.
so, one thing that I have loved both about being a founder and consulting and advising is that I do have the ability to candidly like maintain control of my time.
Great.
And there's 16-hour days where I have tons of energy and I'm in the flow and I'm doing stuff. And then there's days where it's like, honestly, I have to clear everything and get back into visioning space and reorient myself to what I'm doing and why. And like that does not seem to mesh in a corporate working world for me, or it just hasn't. So
Mhm.
that's one learning. I think there's probably many, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, so having control over time, I hear, like, that there's something that you've learned about yourself, which is that it's far healthier for you to be able to, like, tune into how you're feeling, how you're perceiving things, how you're relating to things, like, as they unfold. It's never one thing, it's evolving, and there's, like, a need for you to stay connected to that, and, like, as long as you're staying connected to that, then you can sort of, from that place, make decisions on what commitment you're gonna make, what meeting you might schedule, what task you're gonna take on.
Yeah.
And I also hear, like, there's, like, potentially a friction there between that way of operating and what certain jobs, for example, might demand of you or require of you.
Yeah.
So my sense is like there's like some tension there
Yeah.
as one piece of this. Does that feel right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 You mentioned that there's a couple other things at least that going back to that question around like what have you uncovered in the inquiry that I'm also curious
Mm.
might feel salient here.
Yeah. Um, I think that there's, especially in the early part of my career at Google, it was probably the most ambitious I ever was. And, I was very willing to put in crazy hours and put my nose to the grindstone and get anything done and learn anything and figure it out, and like just run. And there was a part of that, like, inability to rest, almost this freneticism that was
Mm,
associated with ambition, which has shifted over the years as I've gotten more and more aligned with organizations and missions and work that feels more core to like what I'm kind of here to do in the world. And that sounds potentially woo woo, but um, what I've learned is like the closer I get to that alignment, the more I'm able to rest in the trenches of the work, right?
mm,
And so I've had enough kind of glimmers of what that feels like, where like you are so in the flow in a partnerships meeting, or in a pitch conversation, or managing a direct report, or writing a blog post, where it is flow state and there's a calm in it. And so what I'm seeking now in my work is like, I'm really so tired of that energy of the adrenaline fueled, frenetic, restless drive,
yeah.
right? That's actually a signal that something's off.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really searching for in the work that I do is like the feeling of being in it, right? And it's even like the feeling of this conversation for me is like, it's natural. I'm not trying to get any sort of agenda across. I'm
Mhm.
genuinely just showing up as me. And
Mm,
there's something in that which is the whole point. And so like that, the easy way to kind of term that is like, oh, I've learned that wellness is my lane, right? But there's something that I've gotten these glimmers of like, oh, so there's something about one-on-one conversations that's my lane, that like
mm,
comes across. There's something around, food and movement and mindfulness that's my lane, and there's something in there, right?
yeah.
So I have all these like hints,
Yeah.
right? And now I'm just like, okay, well, like, how do I put these together into like what I signal to the world of like, this is what I'm now doing, or like, this is what I'm looking for, or this is how I can serve you, or these are the services I offer, right? And just packaging myself, even as someone who's good at marketing, is actually really hard, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I wanna
yeah,
just reflect on that for a moment. So, you use that term, like, "in my lane," and you were describing, like, being in the flow. W Part of what came up for me as I was listening to you was, like, in those moments when you can just be fully yourself.
hmm
Like, you're not having to perform or be somebody different beyond just who Christina is where it's feeling, um, in that flow state, in that aligned state. I just wanna check and see if I'm touching
yeah,
on what that kind of experience is like for you.
yeah. And most roles have felt claustrophobic to me, um, even a founder role. And it's like being called a marketer feels claustrophobic because I do things outside of marketing. Being a consultant feels claustrophobic because I do things outside of consulting, right? Being a
Yeah.
founder, any like one label, when I've started to identify with it as like who I am, I
Mhm.
start to get that restless feeling again, because it's like, oh, what if what I actually want to be doing today is like outside of the founder role or outside of this role?
Yeah.
And that's, as I'm orienting back into the working world, it's still, I think, necessary to help other people understand like how you do envision yourself partaking and providing value.
Yeah.
Like, what words do I use, right? Like, that does matter at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like language, like communicates ideas. It creates legibility. And it occurs to me that like there's a distinction between the label that you use to describe yourself versus what you are offering for other people. And so I wonder if we would just play with that for a second. Let's just say that you dropped any need to have a label for who Christina is. She's in this box or this box. And instead, your attention were on what you're really wanting to bring forth for others, right? When you're putting your attention on that question, what comes up for you?
What comes up is I really enjoy going deep with people. Like
Uh-huh.
I really enjoy going under the surface level stuff
Yeah.
and getting into the territory of what is unconscious or messy or not seen or not understood and kind of surfacing it and making
Mhm.
sense of it all, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's really general. It happens in many different realms, but like when I'm in positions where I'm able to do that, like I'm most comfortable in those places. Like I'm most like at ease because it feels meaningful.
What makes it really important to you?
Um, I think it's very easy to go through life on autopilot. And I've gone through life on autopilot many years, still do it. Um, and I don't think that's the point,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and it's like some of the most interesting parts of people are in the things that happen like after the meeting, between conversations, in the hallway, like, you know, in the gym, like, in these kind of like off spaces. And like that's where people's humanity kind of shines through.
Mm.
And I love seeing people's humanity like come back. It's like the rosy in their cheeks come back, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like that stuff doesn't really, you have to kind of go deep to get to that stuff. And
What's that experience been like for you, that getting the rosiness back in your own cheeks and getting back to your own humanity?
it's been a long and windy path that has had a lot of different chapters. So I, yeah, I've had a lot of chapters to like my personal wellness practices.
Mm.
Um, and I grew up with, bless them, but very ambitious parents that, drove my sister and I very hard towards achievement and towards the Ivy League and towards, what externally, um, you know, can be stamps of approval and safety in the world, right? Um, and became kind of a machine and
Yeah.
became very good at what I did there and got there and was, had some very serious mental health stuff come up. And so for me, there's been many chapters of my path kind of back, right? Or deconditioning myself. But it's like I had a major yoga chapter, I had a major meditation chapter, I had a major, recently, I've had a major dance chapter. I've had a journaling chapter. I've had a food and nutrition chapter. I've had a sobriety, getting rid of alcohol chapter. And all of these different chapters have brought me into what feel like deeper, more real versions of myself
Mm.
that let me drop into that calm place of like just showing up as me.
Yeah.
And like when I show up as me, that's what has helped me um, do what feels like meaningful work.
Yeah. And so when you're fully showing up as you, what does that enable you to create with others?
It typically involves um, it typically involves like creating something out of nothing. That could be a company. That could be yeah, various things. Um, and it requires feeling. It requires getting into the body and feeling,
Uh-huh.
and like getting out of the head, out of the mind, out of story, out of narrative.
What are you feeling right now?
Um, a little bit of like tightness of breath, in the sense that like I'm needing to actually articulate things into words in this conversation, right?
Mm,
As like that is the medium through which we are engaging, is words, right? That is how we are interacting. Um, and I think there's like a there's always people, like in showing up to any conversation, there's what someone says, what someone looks like, but then there's all the other stuff. There's like the body language, there's just the energetic feel of what's going on, right? And I find like there's so much richness in that,
hmm
that I personally pick up on all the time, and have felt in my life that I've had to like control it in order to be accepted
mm,
by whatever community that I'm in, right? Like if I'm showing up on a pitch, there's a certain way that always felt like I had to show up.
mm,
There was something at the end of my last, of Parable was the name of my last company. Where I just kind of stopped caring about that. I just couldn't. I was so tired that I would just like let all that stuff drop. And that's actually when I realized like there's no amount of acceptance in this world through a check, that's going to allow me to show up in the way that I want. Like I want to
great,
show up in the way that I want energetically.
great. Yeah,
Like that's kind of it. And I don't know, I feel like we've gone off in a different route, but
great.
there's something
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so how much are you in touch with that sense of just simply being who you are without any need to show up differently, like right now?
Um, I tend to be very able to do that when there's no expectations of me.
I'm not expecting anything from you right now.
Right. And so like, but in the working world, right, if I'm showing up, I'm in a job, there's an expectation that I perform in a certain way. There's an expectation of providing value in a certain way. And I think what I'm up against right now is I'm resistant to that in a way that's probably not serving me and definitely not serving other people. Right. But it's kind of this stubbornness of like, don't expect things of me in such a way that I'm going to self modify myself and perform for you. And I'm like really stubborn about that right now. Like very massively stubborn.
What the way I hear that is I can show up as I am without any need to be different, and yet others will impose their expectations on me, and then that's going to create this collision, this friction, and that's um, uncomfortable in some way.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know where to take that, but yes, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of people out there who will tell you, "Be different, show up in this way, do this, don't do that. You can't say that. You can't be that or this." Right?
Yeah. I don't think it's people actually ever telling it to you. It's
Not
just
in
like,
so many words necessarily.
yeah,
Sometimes they will.
it's the way that culture just is,
Sure.
right? And I'll take my last year as an example, where I have gone in this beautiful rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole of dance, right? And there's something about immersing myself in movement, and quite literally in my body,
Yeah.
and in a very different state, which, like, there's, you can describe it as various things, but it's very feminine, right?
Mhm.
And um, it's been like the medicine that I needed to counteract the mode that I was in the working world,
Mhm.
right? Which I think was a very driven masculine way of existing. And yet for me, there's so much authenticity in that space. And now it's like, well, how do you bring topics like that and the healing that's in that and the authentic self that I am and in that space back into business, right? Because it's like these are topics that feel taboo, like being in your feelings is sensuality, right?
Uh-huh.
How do you lead as a sensual woman in the world? It's like, whoa, okay, let's
I don't
not.
know.
That's some other place that like
Well,
doesn't intersect.
before you even get to the story that you can't do that, I'm just wondering like
Yeah.
how would you do that if you were to even guess?
I mean, currently, I think I'm in the experimentation phase which is like just be it and
Uh-huh.
see what happens.
Yeah.
Be willing to be it.
Great.
Risk ostracization. That's I don't know if that's the right way to say that word, but um, see what happens. And but it feels like a major risk, financial risk, reputational risk.
Yeah.
You know, and I do feel like I'm in deep water in the sense that like I don't have role models to look to. Like the women in leadership that I have looked to historically, I feel are operating in a way that's very of the culture now, which I can
Yeah.
stigmatize as masculine or cold or
Mhm.
rigid or various words, right? But it's like I can look at some of those role models and be like, I actually like I love you. I admire where you've gotten. Like you're in a seat of power. Like go you, go lady. But like I really don't want to be you because you seem really unhappy,
Great. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and the reason I say great, by the way, is not like that that's wonderful, but it's more like that you're clear on what you don't want.
Yeah, too clear.
And what I hear is that there are things that are at stake, right? Like you're cognizant of the fact that if you show up um, in this way that's authentic to you, that feels true to you, um, it might invite negative response. You might be denied certain opportunities, or you might be punished in some ways. I won't hypothesize in specifics right now, but
Yeah,
there's some sense, right, that the world won't allow me to be who I am.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if it were to behave in that way, what would you have to feel?
What do you mean? Can you ask it differently?
So you're out there in the world. Here's who I am. I'm Christina.
Yeah.
The world says that's not okay. What's the feeling that creates for you?
I mean, the what comes up immediately is just like, I'm not going to be paid. It's like,
That's
oh,
not
you
a feeling.
can. It's fear.
Yeah.
It's fear not of not being able to take care of myself,
Yeah.
of like being fear of being dependent on the random other. Um, it's fear.
Can you feel that right now in this space?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you willing to allow that here?
Yes.
She says,
Want to.
gritting her teeth.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Where do you feel it show up the most?
Like physically,
Yeah.
it's like low back all the way to like it's kind of like classic like cat hairs in the back of my neck kind of a thing going on. It's like oof,
Yeah.
oof,
Yeah.
that it's that.
Yeah. It doesn't always feel nice, huh?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
And also like it's the kind of thing where it's like I do feel like this is a recorded call, so I should be in this little square and I shouldn't like do this. Like this is not physically acceptable in this
You're
call.
totally okay doing that.
Right? But it's like that's what needs to happen because it's like it's also here, right? It's
Sure.
like in the body, and it's like you move it out, and then
Great.
it moves. It's kind of gone.
Yeah. And I'm sure you know like, all of that. There's something to hear in it. There's something to listen to. So if you were to tune into that channel for a moment, like, but
Yeah.
the fear is telling you, like, what is it saying?
Well, the fear was saying like being able to physically just do what I did, like act in ways and, you know, do things that aren't like that I don't see other people doing on Zoom calls.
Yeah.
It's like this,
Uh-huh.
and like this.
Uh-huh.
Like if I'm able to do that and like you're still taking me seriously and haven't like shut down and run away and, been like, what the fuck is she doing? Like then after that, I feel like I can like another layer of my armor can go away, or another
Mm.
part of my guard is actually down, and
Yeah.
that's actually what dissipates the fear. It's
Yeah.
just that I never see other people doing that on the formal professional calls that I tend to be on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's like it's in the water. It's in the culture of like,
Yeah. And in this space right here, you just had an experience where it was totally okay.
yeah, fair. Yes. Thank you for that. Yes.
I don't want us to bump
Yeah.
over that. Skip
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So what if you were able to meet your fear in this way each and every time it came up?
Um, it's not actually about me meeting my fear because I'm very aware when it shows up. It's about letting it be seen.
Yeah.
And it's about choosing to let it be seen, choosing to process it like in the moment socially. And it's almost a faith thing. It's like I'm choosing to believe that in expressing whatever emotion in the moment, like that is actually how the culture gets changed, and that is actually how it becomes okay,
Hmm.
is that I just am willing to do it.
Yeah.
And um and this is something that like I know, like I know that it's like, yeah, just be yourself in the world, and like if you're too much for people, or if you're making people uncomfortable and they go away, and it's like those definitely weren't your people anyway, right? um and I like wonder why that still matters to me, right? It's like there's still some worlds where it's like, oh no, I'm still actually willing to self modify to
Yeah.
be in these worlds. And why is it that I think why do I allow that? Like that's the internal questioning for me in this moment.
So let's just take that question seriously. So let's just assume there's a damn good reason that part of you does that. What's the reason?
Um, I come back to money. It's like I believe that my professional self, my business self, who shows up looking and sounding and serving in a certain way, is the person that keeps me safe in the world.
Mm.
And if she doesn't keep me safe, who's going to, you know?
And meaning like the safety comes from money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So if I don't perform in these ways that others are expecting of me, then I can't earn money and then I can't be safe.
yeah. And I think I have a belief that there's so much that I love that's in the world of movement, right? And things that happen, in studio spaces and yoga studios and gyms and pools and offline and dance spaces. And um, I do have a belief that there's no way to make money in that world, even while logically knowing that's wrong.
Hmm.
I think I'm still very much held back by the sense that I can make way more faster, and therefore have to, like, it's almost like I sap this belief that I'm sapping myself less if I'm putting myself in spaces that have a higher like hourly wage, right? And
Mm.
I believe that I have like a very like the highest hourly wage that I can give myself or earn is in these professional capacities that actually require me to self-abandon.
Mm.
And like the choice of, okay, how might I make money in the movement world, even if it's way less money, but I'm not sapping myself. I'm like really wanting to like push myself over that cliff.
Yeah.
And like at the juncture where like I can tell I'm dragging my feet in the I'll call it the white collar working world,
Yeah, sure.
right? Like I'm showing up as a professional using my words and my strategy in my brain, right? I'm not using my body in any way.
Right.
Like I'm really wanting myself to let go of that because it feels like a limiting belief, and yet I'm not doing it. Like I'm not actually going out and like auditioning for yoga teacher jobs, or I don't even know where I would start, right? It's like it's almost this like what am I doing? Like I'm pivoting in that way. Like be I should be it feels like I'm occupying a privileged position to be able to make a pretty high hourly wage
Yeah.
in a professional capacity, and yet it's not making me happy.
Right.
And like the what feels like the bifurcation or the choice I have to make is be willing to go make a lot less money to be happy. And I don't want to make that choice. Like I don't want that to be the belief. I don't want that reality. I want to be able to like make good money, take good care of myself, keep myself safe. I don't need anything crazy extravagant, but
Yeah.
like easily make a living doing what I enjoy. And yet that doesn't I don't believe I can. And so then I self-abandon and go modify myself and become a little bit of a robot performer.
Yeah. Great. So you can totally see it. You can see
I can see it. I just want
the
to change
pattern.
it. I don't know how to change it. Like I want myself to act differently. I'm I'm really I think I'm very self-critical that I'm not. And the best I can do right now is just go really slowly and not like not do anything I'd regret, which is like going full steam back into that world.
Sure. Well, what's really interesting to me, Christina, is like you can like fully acknowledge that you have this belief that in the dance and movement world, there's just like no money to be made there, or it can't compare to like the white collar tech world, right?
Yeah.
And I totally get that argument. I know nothing about the dance world, so I don't speak from any like informed
Yeah.
position there. So I can't speak to the economics, but it's interesting because you can clearly articulate how that's simply a belief. And my hunch is that as you're talking about this and you're like, yeah, like, but I know there's this belief that's like limiting. There's like an emotion or like some set of emotions under that that's just really hard to be with.
Yeah, it's um it puts me up against my pride, I'll say,
Uh,
of um like the phrase that's coming to mind is I'm worth more than that.
hmm,
And it's like I feel like where I would need to begin in working in the, dance and movement space, let's put it that way, right? I would need to be willing to begin by doing things that earn way less,
yeah,
and I'm worth more than that. And so it's this belief and it's this desire to really like maintain my own like dignity
hmm,
and to stand up for myself as a woman who should be able to like earn her a good living, like and like almost like wanting to defend the massive amount of effort and energy that I've put into like education and the long hours at Google and like being a founder and pitching over 200 investors for millions of dollars, and like there's all of this like work and effort that I put into the world that like I do think I have a little bit of this hunch, this what's the right way to put it, like I don't know how to put it. It's just like this phrase of like I'm worth more than that.
yeah,
And there's something that feels good and right and dignified in that belief. And there's something that feels egotistical and not serving me in that belief of like,
yeah,
I'm willing to do things even though they have extreme intrinsic value to me
mm,
because the paycheck is small. And and I feel stuck. I'm like underneath that is anger at myself anger at the world for being that way. Like, why is it that certain jobs make that much money where, like, are they actually helping people that
Mm,
much? Like, not really. And people who are on the front lines doing extremely hard work that's really helpful to people, I'm thinking like social workers, caretakers, like, make way less than they should. And I'm like real angry about that. And there's no place to direct that anger. Like, it's not going
mm.
to help to be angry about it. And yet, like, I'm not willing to jump into that world because I want to maintain a certain quality of life. And
Yeah.
like I don't think I should be ashamed that I want a certain quality of life.
I don't want you to be ashamed of that either. Yeah, it's perfectly all right for you to want to maintain a certain quality of life and to earn a certain amount of money. I think that's all great.
Yeah. Feeling angry. That's what I'm feeling right now.
I'm just going to say you are totally allowed to feel angry.
Yeah.
I welcome it.
Yeah.
When's the last time you allowed yourself to feel angry?
Last week at a dance event. Um, there's a lot of emotion that gets processed in dance for me. And there's increasingly spaces where that's very much welcomed and okay. And I think they're wonderful places and spaces, and I love them. It's very cathartic.
Yeah.
And I think that's in a way why I love that world. It's like all of this emotion that otherwise has no route to the surface.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have a route to the surface. It's like the point of being there is to turn the raw stuff of feeling into art and
Yeah.
like, whew, gorgeous, beautiful, amazing. More of that, please.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, part of what I hear in that is well, correct me if I'm wrong, like for the last little bit, we've been talking about you and relating to like the world of movement and dance. And on one hand, I hear like, oh, like there's a world where Christina really wants to then put her attention into that, like vocationally, professionally. There's also another world where there are certain qualities of that, qualities of being, qualities of expression that um, you really value in that you want to also be able to bring other places.
Yeah.
But then the stuckness is like, but it doesn't feel like I can.
Yeah.
So how much of it right now, this might be a tricky question, but like how much of the stuckness that you're experiencing right now is I want to do dance, but I can't, versus I want to bring some of these qualities to really value to the working world and I can't.
I think it's both. Um, it's I want it to be okay that I don't have a Calendly to share with people and that I'm going to have to respond to their email based off of like, I don't know, I'm going to see how I feel tomorrow and
Hmm.
have that be like not just okay, but valued. And like, that's one small example, right? But it's like, that feels very risky to bring into like I don't believe, and I'll say it that way because I can see it's a belief that I could change somehow. Um, I don't believe I can like raise my hand for full-time salaried employment jobs with that fundamental orientation towards time. It's like to be a full-time employed salaried person, it's like this entity has owns these buckets of your time every single day. And if you don't show up and give them that bucket of time in the way that they have expected, you have failed. And like, I don't think I can sign up for that right now. And so I have to stay in these models that are, more flexible, where I have various clients where I work in a part time capacity, right? Because culturally, that's the only way I've understood how to put my how to have my needs met and to be able to give to others, right? It's like one entity doesn't own my time anymore. But that's really tricky, and I do think that we need way more sophistication around that, and I'm figuring it out live. So it's like I'm in the investigation of that, and I'm in this investigation of how do I show up in all of these dance spaces more and shift from student and practitioner
Yeah.
into some sort of teacher or facilitator or guide or someone who's helping others, right? I'm not there just for myself. My oxygen mask is already on and I'm helping others in some way, right?
It sounds like in some sense that you like just the where you are in the present is already meeting some of these conditions that you're seeking.
Possibly. Say more. Go on.
I don't know. You just said that
Like this conversation itself, maybe as an
you
example.
have like
Yeah.
flexibility of time. You can choose how and when you work. You're able to put time into dance and ponder the notion of like then moving into this like facilitator
Yeah.
trainer role. Uh, you have sounds like a variety of clients where you get to like define how that working relationship functions and earn a good rate on that. I don't know. Based off what I've heard so far, it sounds like some of these things that are really important to you are already present.
I think you're probably right, and I think it's hard for me to see them. Um, I don't know why that is. It's hard for me to see them. Um, bef- in a time before I've been able to it's hard to articulate what I'm doing. I just know intuitively I am in allowing myself to go very slowly. Just because I don't have an explanation for other people of what I'm doing doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing. And so I do think I know how I'm doing. I just don't know how to explain it to people. And what I'm realizing right now in this conversation is that I default to saying I don't know what I'm doing when the reality is I know what I'm doing. I just don't know how to explain it to you. Right. And that's actually a really important difference for me right now
Hmm.
because one's empowering and one is disempowering. Right. I can sense that it may be helpful for people who want to work with me and can see that I could help their organization or help them as leaders or, whatnot. Like they want to know like, oh, do you offer product marketing? Do you offer go to market? Are you a
Mhm.
founder coach? Are you a dance therapist? Like, what are you doing? And it's like, yes, is the answer. Yeah, to all of them. But I just don't have myself like packaged.
Well, there's a version of that where you go out into the world and you're like, "Here's my name's Christina, here's what I do, and here's like the menu of options that I can offer." But there's
Yeah.
also another version of that where it's like you're in connection with people and you're simply listening to what they are needing.
Correct. That is what it is at the end of it.
And
That's
then
what
you're
it
like,
is.
"Oh yeah, I can help with that."
Right. So like, but what do I call that, Brian? It's like, and I guess why do I feel like I need a term to call it?
Beats me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder what would happen if you've dropped the need, even just as an experiment, dropped the need to explain what you do to anyone for a month. Doesn't
Hmm.
mean you just don't go into conversations and listen and see how you can be helpful and see what would like make you come alive when you're in those relationships. But just like to drop that, like, oh, I need to make sure people know what I do, sort of thing.
I am very willing to be in that experiment, Brian. I can let you know how it goes in a month. Um, but yeah, it is an experiment. It feels like a new way.
Yeah. So just we're starting to wrap up here.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you here, just yeah, what do you want to underscore? What is poking out of all this for you?
Hmm. The importance of language, honestly. Not even to it's like the importance of language to myself, right? Of how, yeah, as someone who I think I've prided myself as and just expected that I'm someone who can always articulate what's going on, right? I can always put words to things that match the essence of what is happening, right? And to give myself a little bit more slack that whatever transition it is that I'm going through in this moment, I don't need to be able to articulate it yet. And that's actually where I need to be a little bit more compassionate to myself. It's like I'm operating with faculties that lie underneath reason and words and narrative and story and identity. And as I'm in that murky, muddy, the stuff where it all begins, to not need to explain myself to anyone at all,
Including yourself.
including myself. Yeah.
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 Well, I welcome you being in the murky, feely, primordial stuff.
Definitely in that stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Cristina. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for doing what you do and exposing these conversations. I think that this is this backstage work is actually like where it's all at. Everything else is the pretty packaging, but this is the meat of it all. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Be well. Thank you for listening to this episode of Slow Down and Speed Up. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, a subscribe, a comment, or rate it in your favorite podcasting app. And if you're a founder who's looking to reach the next level through coaching, or you'd like to come on the show, please reach out to me at dashingleadership.com.